Uh, okay. Um, but man, I've I've uh I've missed the whole like we were doing one Bitcoin meetup a week. We were doing like the conference and
Yep.
we were doing at least one of these a week, it felt like. And
Yep.
now it's just like fiat insanity ensued and life. And I miss it all. I miss hanging out
Yeah.
with all the Bitcoin people, and it's just kind of a bummer.
So, yeah, this is worth telling you.
Yeah.
I went the other direction.
Yes.
So, and to be honest, I want to give you like a genuine, heartfelt thank you.
Really?
Yep. So, for the
Yes.
folks that listen to you, I'll tell a quick story. I'm newer to Bitcoin, few years in. I won't tell you exactly when. Uh,
Mhm.
we can get into that if you want, how I got there. But Pacific Bitcoin 2022 is my first conference, right? Not only my first conference, but I think the first time I'd really like talked to other people into Bitcoin in my life in person. And I roll up in my Uber, step out on the curb. Really, frankly, I had no idea what to expect, right? But I'm okay with that. I've traveled the world for work, been in different cultures, been in uncomfortable situations or whatever before. So I'm not worried, not nervous. I don't have any kind of that social anxiety or concern at all, really. I'm sort of immune to it, I guess. But I step out the curb and I don't know, I might have went 5 feet, maybe 3 seconds. And these two handsome gentlemen, Jed and Mark, were there practically giving me a hug. And I'm like, hey, but you guys were welcoming, sincere, smiling, and it gave me like a great vibe. And I knew within literal seconds of arriving at the event, like, oh, I'm gonna have a good time here. It's gonna be cool. So thank you.
It was like a big family reunion. You were just
Yeah,
one of our cousins or a
that's
brother.
what it felt like. And then
Yeah.
on top of that, you introduced me to Eastside Tony
Oh yeah.
and Billy McAdoo, and they run the stuff in my area.
Yeah.
So I've since been to every meetup that's happened.
Wow.
Uh, and even I talked to Jules about maybe doing like a quick talk at one of hers.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. So it's been great.
Oh man, that is so amazing. Why don't we backtrack one step further because you did mention your journey and everything else.
Yeah.
Usually when I do one of these, we have Alan who gives great intros.
Okay.
But I just like to just talk, and because I'm not trying to do anything other than just what you're talking about, where we're just connecting, we're
Yep.
throwing our ideas out there, we're trying to build the network.
Yep.
So to me, this has a whole different purpose. That's the only purpose. I don't want any of my own ego involved, that
Same.
I'm not trying to monetize. I'm not. So to me, that's not as important. And if people get value out of this, that's great. But I personally do,
Yep.
so
Same.
I was thrilled meeting you, and I think that you are probably one of the people that I spent the most time with personally while I was at the conference,
Mhm.
which was great because it's kind of like it almost felt like we traveled there together from the same like meetup group here or
Yeah.
something,
Yep.
which was amazing. But then again, it felt perfect enough that like we all went off and just did our own thing too, and just kept networking and kept meeting
Yep.
new people and listening to this and that, and then we'd always end up just gravitating back to the same spot, so it was super
Yep.
cool. But maybe a good starting point would be, I know you weren't really a braggadocious kind of person to us when we were in person, but I was super impressed as I got to know you with your credentials, with your background, with your education, with even when we would be walking down the street and be like, I designed this and I did that and whatnot. So
Yeah.
I mean, I know that that's not a big deal to you, but I think it's
All right.
nice when people can go, holy crap, that dude knows his stuff. That guy is smart. That guy, I like to at least give you some sort of, so you're not bragging. I just want you to tell,
Yeah.
for the sake of those listening, like who you are, and then maybe after that, your Bitcoin journey.
Sure. I'll do the sort of medium sized version of this, and you can slow me down or speed me up if you respect that. All right. So my name's Todd. I grew up in the Boston area in Massachusetts, little ugly town called Brockton, just outside of it, in a slightly less ugly suburb. And mom was at home, did a lot of like retail sort of jobs in her life that she really enjoyed, and some accounting. Dad was a systems engineer for a tech company in sales, and middle class, pretty normal. When I eventually went to school, I had buddies from Jersey and New York instead, stuff that thought my family was like the Cleavers. There wasn't any yelling, nobody was throwing anything at each other. It was like kind of boring and normal in my world, right? Moved into the city of Boston to go to school at Northeastern University, which is such a good school that I couldn't even get in there anymore, but I get to tell people I went there, which is kind of fun. I just don't I don't say how long ago. And I studied mechanical engineering for 5 years with no winters or summers off, which included a co-op program. So you would be in school most of the time, but work like a pretty significant amount of time, like enough work to pay for things type of work, right? While you're in college. And there I discovered in one of my internships, this idea that you could work for a company that doesn't design or make their own products. They are hired gun mercenaries that professionally design products for other companies. And, it was a studio type of vibe to the workplace, super collaborative, people being vocal, challenging, thoughtful, and working on not like one product for the year, but like 20, because we're working for all these different, blue chip companies, right?
Yeah.
So I really kind of got enamored with that middle to late of my academic tenure, and basically graduated with a job at one of those design firms. So have you ever heard of like IDEO or Frog or like those types of companies? That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I'll fast forward through a bunch of stuff. I did that for 20 years, like 2 solid decades working at a couple different firms. Whether 9/11, 2008, like all kinds of stuff happened in the middle, but I tended to do pretty well, and I went up the ranks of being like a guy that was like on the CAD workstation, like physically designing the parts, to like running the programs, to like running the teams, and on and on and on. And then eventually one of the firms I was at was acquired by a massive, one of the top 2 or 3 contract manufacturers in the world. So like the phone in your pocket is made by this company. It's not a fruit company that makes that phone. It's someone else that makes the phone for the fruit company, right? So design in that space for those products that were going to mass production. So I'll cap all that off by saying that's the sort of my expertise, my background, right? If you've ever been in a doctor's office, an ER, a clinical setting of any kind, something I designed has been on you or in you for sure. I've done, there could be something still in you that I designed, like a hip replacement or something like that, right? All that said, being a consultant for a couple decades, basically means your brain gets wired to walk into a situation, have absolutely no idea what's going on, and then very, very quickly, like, start creating and providing value back to people because that's what they're paying you for, right? Last thing you want to be is like the 28-year-old engineer that walks into a conference room with a bunch of 55-year-old designers who have been doing end effectors for surgical instruments for 25 years and try to pretend that you know anything that they don't, because you don't. So like your job is quickly, well, where can I provide value in this ecosystem? The reason I'm telling you that is I've got a brain that's sort of like wired to calculate value all the time. And I kind of like by default go first principle, make it simpler than it is at its on the surface, right? That's engineering in a nutshell, like break things down into the smaller problems that you can tackle. So, You want to get into how I get to Bitcoin then?
Well, man,
Do
I
you want
think,
to ask questions, or do you want to
I,
ask questions about that stuff? Because I could tell you things I worked
yeah,
on, design,
yeah.
whatever.
Well, that's the thing is like, I was super impressed because you were just throwing out, and you weren't, like I said, you weren't bragging, but you were like, oh, hey, I designed this. And, it was like some heater
Yeah,
at the place we all met up at the last night or whatever. And it was like, oh yeah, we did stuff for Tesla and NASA. And, you're just rattling off all these different companies and, the position that you currently are at your company now, like
yeah,
these are your credentials are extremely impressive. That's just kind of the point that I wanted to get across to
sure.
the listeners,
Appreciate that.
so, and
Yeah,
it's not, and you're very humble about it. It wasn't like you were just saying, oh, look what
well,
I've done. Like I
my
was,
wife keeps me humble because when we walk around, I don't get to point out what I
yeah,
she
she's
doesn't
probably
want to
like,
hear it anymore.
you told
She's
me
tired
that.
of
Yeah.
it.
That's funny. But yeah, so anyway, super impressed. Um, if you can fit in that little side note of your one-on-one with Greg Foss while you're at the thing at some point during this, that'd be cool too. But yeah, go ahead and hit us with your Bitcoin journey next.
Yeah, so working the fiat thing, pretty successful career, I would say, for to my standard at least, which is what's important. Feeling good about all that. COVID hits. Okay, now we're going to work from home. Okay, I get to keep my job. All right, things are still going to be fine. We're extraordinarily fortunate that way. My wife, by the way, is in the arts, so totally different, and we balance each other that way. She builds the community by like teaching kids an art form, right? Like totally different than engineering. So she got to keep doing that too. So all kind of magical from that perspective. We had been, the idea was save for and buy a house. So like we're building cash in a bank account for a few years, and we're talking about like Silicon Valley house down payment type
Right.
thing, which is like, and then COVID hits. I don't know if I want to buy a house and set up roots in a place anymore. That's a little bit more of an unknown. And I've got this cash, and I see what the Fed starts doing. And I'm like, man, I do not want this number of dollars with zeros on it sitting in an account where I can clearly see this is not good. So then I start looking for, in my brain was like riskier asset classes, something I could park some or all of that in and hopefully grow with the volume of liquidity that's coming into the system is the way I looked at it. Like, well, everything's going to go up no matter what. Things we like to go up and things we don't like to go up, they're all going up when they're injecting this much cash, right?
Right.
And so literally nobody told me about Bitcoin. I didn't have anybody offer me any insight or advice or whatever. I just sort of like, it was on the list. It's actually similar to Michael Saylor, I guess. I'm not comparing myself to Michael Saylor, by the way. But he had the same problem. Too much cash. What do I do with it? It's a melting ice cube. Here's the list of possibilities: gold, farmland, silver, whatever, right?
Right.
So I started looking at Bitcoin like I would looked at anything else on that list. And something about that value calculation, like get down to the first principles part of my brain, like went, oh my gosh, there's only 21 million of them. Oh my gosh, they thought of the difficulty, they thought of the difficulty adjustment. Oh my, and I went, and it's digital and I can self-custody. And I just went very quickly in like 2-week period, deep, as deep as I could in 2 weeks, let's put it that way. And made my first purchases then, like pretty quickly, and went, I would say, heavier than most people do at a first purchase of a thing they barely understand, because I was in a point of like panic about like, I can't have this money sitting around, right? Just I mean, I realize this is a first world problem. I sound like a moron to most
Right.
on the planet using language like that, but that's the truth. That's what was going on in my life. Not ashamed of it,
Right.
but that's the reality. So, and then I've probably spent 2,000-3,000 hours since just reading listening, studying, questioning, trying to be a part of the community, etc. No expert. I have a point of view on all this, which we can talk about, but
For sure.
don't ask me to help you set up your Lightning node. Yeah.
Well, I've had mine going for I don't know, year and a half or 2 years now, so I don't need that. No, I think the part about, you shrugging off the first world problem thing, I think you're basically being responsible, which is something that's lacking nowadays. I mean, you have, been given X, whatever X is. In that case, it's, I'm responsible with my value holding system, which traditionally has been US dollars, but you're responsible. You're like, what am I going to do with this? How am I going to not let this, melt away? Like you mentioned the ice cube analogy with Sailor. So to me, I think that's just being responsible. And I think that's one thing that's lacking in society overall is personal responsibility and accountability. So to me, that's a positive. That's not a like, hey, I guess if we equate it to a perspective, from like the third world or something, it's different when, the needs there may be just, hey, I'm trying to stay warm and be, not be hungry from day to day. So which is another plus for Bitcoin, because we can bank the unbanked via Bitcoin. So
totally.
Anyway, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent, but I didn't want you to feel that, you're, to me, it's just about, being fiscally responsible is just another aspect of being personally responsible and accountable, which I have found to be extremely lacking in society nowadays, especially, North America.
Totally.
Where I'm familiar with. So, one of the things that we talked about, well, maybe I'll backtrack and we'll get into that later, because I know you said we had tons of conversations while we were at the conference together, but you did say, like, certain people, which maybe you can point out some of your I don't know if you would say favorite or people that influenced you the most, because to me, I like that we're all just Satoshi. We're all on the same wavelength. Yeah, there's certain people that influence us more than others, bloody blah, but I like that there's not big egos in this space for the most part. And another great thing about Bitcoin is, like, it's not a pyramid where the few at the top control things, but it's like the group of people at the bottom, like that is the people's money, and we are all the same. So I have zero aspirations of ever becoming anything other than somebody that really gives back to the world and provides value, like you were talking about earlier. So you did say certain people, and I know who they are because we've had these conversations, influence you, but then also maybe just start off with what Bitcoin means to you or for you, or what is it? Like, as if I was somebody that's not familiar with Bitcoin, and then also what your particular viewpoint is, like the whole elephant analogy, it's a rope, it's a tree, it's a wall, all that jazz. So what is your perspective?
It's a tougher question than you're meaning it to be, because you could go down a lot of different avenues here. To me, Bitcoin is now, and even more so in the future, going to be the best representation of value we as the human race have come up with, that is securable and transferable, right? So, like, there's value in just us being who we are. I'm not saying that it replaces that. What I'm saying is it's a way to preserve and move and transfer that value effectively and safely and securely, right? That's kind of like, so I just think value. It is literal embodiment of value, digital embodiment of value, right? It's also like an insurance policy. It's also like the only off-ramp we have for the impending disaster coming our way. There's another 15 different ways to sort of think of it, but I think the easiest way is it's just a legitimate, convenient, sound way to store and transfer value.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And that was a bit of a leading question too, because it led into the next thing that I was thinking about that we had spoken about down at the Pacific Bitcoin Conference, which was actually coming up with a list. And I know you've started because you've sent me versions of it where you are. I mean, I'm one of the people that's saying, hey, there's 40,000 Bitcoin books out there. There's a million podcasts. And I'm like, all right, that's a start. Let's get more. Like, to me, there's not enough
Yeah, of course.
because the more the merrier, the more the better, because it's this voice or this person or this angle or the way this is taught, that's going to be the thread that the person pulls on when they're doing the unravel. And so
Sure.
in that, you were saying, hey, we should make this a lot simpler when we're doing the education, and let's make a list. Like, okay, these are the things that people say Bitcoin is, and I personally think that it's all of them, and you rattle off a bunch, and people say it's hope, it's a revolution, it's a monetary unit. I mean, that's a given. It's a
Technology.
it's a banking system for the unbanked world.
Sure.
It's insurance, it's a speculation, it's
Yep.
it's a form of sovereignty where somebody can't come in and know who you are when you're transacting. It's so many things. And your idea in down there is, hey, I want to make this list, and then from there make it simple. It's like, hey, here's what Bitcoin is, and then go to the next level, which is maybe defining what that is, and then making another track where you go, okay, if this is the thread you need to pull on to make your way down the Bitcoin learning curve, then here, follow this. And then you go, okay, for me it's the sovereignty issue. It's a revolution. It's what Jason Lowry is talking about, where it's like he's got more of a mindset because of the way he's trained and everything, of like a war thing. And I think he gets misinterpreted a lot of the time, but
Totally,
that's a side,
I
that's
agree with you.
a bunny trail.
Yep.
But I really like your idea, and I think you should continue to work on it, because it really simplifies things, and maybe even add in a secondary side where we even say, hey, these are this is the FUD you'll hear when you're dealing with this particular aspect of
Great
Bitcoin,
point.
one of these things that is Bitcoin. But if you want to take that away or add to that a little bit, because I kind of did a horrible job of explaining it.
No, it's fair. So let's go boil it down to the basic principle. The basic thing is adoption has to happen, full stop, or we're all in big trouble, right?
Yes.
We all believe that. I think most Bitcoiners would agree that that's key.
Can I just jump in real quick?
Yeah.
What does that mean to you? Like, define what, is it a percentage? Is it what is adoption?
Boy, there's lots of versions of that out there. If you talk to Swan, it's like a literal number of people.
What do you think it is?
I think it's something like a quarter of the developed world's population.
Oh, wow. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to send us off on another track, but that really just struck, I was super curious. Anyway.
Let's say the G7 or the G20,
yeah,
something like that, is where it turns and doesn't ever come back. There's no hope of stop. Not that there's any hope of stopping the technology, but I'm saying there's no stopping the social momentum of it.
I agree. The only thing that we're lacking is that.
Maybe, and I'll bet somebody who studies the social sciences would tell you it's something more like 8% or 12%, and I'm not that person to tell you.
I've heard as low as 3.7 or 4.
So once the tipping point happens, right? I'm just throwing out a number. My vision of it is it's so ingrained and so important to so many people in the G20 or in the G7 or whatever you want to think of it.
Okay, sorry, I mean to bunny trail that, but I was curious. Anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, we need adoption, right? And I think everyone would agree to that. And then you get to the point where okay, what's the tactic that you're using to get adoption? So I'll use a good example for me to illustrate my point. Do you think Elizabeth Warren is good or bad for Bitcoin?
That's a good question. Because I'm you could ask the same thing of Peter Schiff. Anytime, there's no such thing as bad press,
right?
Because anytime that you say the word, it's getting the word out into the psyche of civilization, into people, into their minds, or people that have never seen the word before. So, it's even like Karsten, whatever, is saying that. So I don't know. That's a great question.
Yeah. So I would say half the country hates her guts. So if she's talking about something negatively, it's probably potentially positive for half the country. You know what I'm saying? So
That's
I would
true,
say
for sure.
good for Bitcoin. I would almost rather she rail against it than for it.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's actually more promoting for her to be. Anyway, my point is, a normal reaction for most normal Bitcoiners would be to attack her. Right. And I'm guilty of it, but I'm using it as an example because I respond to her stupid tweets all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, and I'll point out like why she's wrong. Right. When has that ever done any good
Right.
for
Yeah,
actually
right.
convincing someone to change their mind? It's never worked.
Yep.
So I go through these reset processes myself. And so part of the reason I was like, okay, we need to drive adoption. Fighting against people who are not adopting is clearly never going to work because you're never going to convince Peter Schiff that it's a good idea, right? So, or Elizabeth Warren or whoever else, right?
Yeah.
So then it's like, okay, well, how do people adopt it? Well, I can't imagine anyone adopting it who didn't do their own research. And I can't imagine anyone doing their own research unless it's something they're interested in. Right?
Absolutely.
So you can't make them motivated. You can't create the motivation for them. So
if you do, they're basically piggybacking off of your convictions, and they're gonna fold like a wet laundry the second that there's anything, the wind blows sideways. So yeah, if there's volatility or anything, they're gone. So yes, I 100%
at that point
agree.
it's a chore for them, right?
Yeah.
So my thing is like, okay, well, how do you use the term pull on a thread, or how do you identify the thread that they will be willing on their own to pull? And so part of me was like, well, there's lots of different ways to come at Bitcoin, right? It's got, like we just talked about, you could go this way, that way, that. You could be into self-sovereignty and you'd be a prepper. You could be into philanthropic things and talking about banking the unbanked, like you name it, right? And once you identify that, it's like, great, what's the handy way to get them on that path? Because it might not be your path. Right. For me, if it's like, the code, the technology, I can't help somebody. I'm a clueless idiot. I'm a mechanical engineer. I couldn't code my way out of a paper bag, and I can't help anyone set up their Lightning node. So what I would do is like find out whatever that thing is. And if it was technology, let's say, I'd say, great, you should go check out Jeff Booth, right? And read his book. And you know what I mean? Like it would make,
for sure,
which are things I am interested in, but I wouldn't know without talking to somebody.
Yeah.
My point
You're not
is,
the expert on that subject.
Not the expert, but also haven't done the good work of publishing or put something out that is like, will resonate with people.
Right.
And so I've gone down a bunch of those paths, and I was just like, well, I'll just collect a list maybe of like what those are and categorize them by like what that interest might be. So if you're interested in macro, well, Lynn Alden and whatever. Or if you come from Wall Street hedge fund management, like James Lavish and Foss, right? And down on the list, right? Or if you're into gold, I don't know, Lawrence Lepard, right? So I started to kind of work on it just because, I don't know, it was like a thing to do. And I thought maybe it'd be helpful. Since then, I've actually seen other people have done like pretty good lists, but they always tend to be kind of a list of everything.
Yeah.
To your point about there being 40,000 books or whatever, like, great, where do I start? Right.
Right.
I hope you get lucky.
Yep.
So part of my pet little mini thesis is to promote adoption. The best thing you can do is learn a little bit about the person you're talking to or the group you're talking to's interest, and then connect them and just set them on the path, and then obviously help them as they need to, whatever the thing may be. And it doesn't take more than like 3-5 minutes of conversation to kind of identify what the thing is that person might be interested in, right?
Yeah, I like that. And then another aspect of your idea was it seemed like it simplified things too, because a lot of people, especially when they're first starting down a path or first, taking the first step, making it as easy as possible also seems like a great idea, because some of the books that people are referred to,
Yeah.
nobody wants to read a big old thick book. Nobody wants to get super technical.
Yeah.
Nobody wants, but then if they are, motivated by, you name it, any one of the words we've been throwing out, let's just say they live in a place where the banking thing's an issue. I'm sure that's an easier thing than somebody over here where the US dollar still seems to be it. And, that's not as big a deal, but then maybe they want more sovereignty. And so you go,
Sure.
oh, cool. Here's sovereignty. Here's the next thing. This is what sovereignty means. And,
Yep.
go check this out right here. So to
Yeah.
me, that really breaks it down and makes it a lot more simple. So I really do hope you keep pursuing that. I don't know where you are in that project.
Yeah, I just did a little bit of it and put it down for a while.
Yeah.
I will go back to it eventually, because especially with the meetups I've been going to, you meet
Yeah, for sure.
people, and the new people are the ones that are important, right?
Yeah,
So how do you help them connect the dots,
for
essentially,
sure.
for themselves, because you can't do it for them,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah, I hope I look forward to, like, if you can bounce that off me periodically
Yeah,
too,
of course.
because it's like I'm kind of there with you when it comes to, I don't know, this life in general seems to be like a roller coaster of ups and downs and whatnot, but it seems like your fiat gig will kind of pull most of your time, effort, and energy sometimes, which I want to, start going the other way, because
Yeah.
I'm not fulfilled at all.
Totally. By
And
the way,
that,
that was my conversation with Foss, so I'll bring it up
yeah,
now.
oh yeah, yeah. Go ahead and hit us with that then.
So, Foss is like near hero level for me,
Absolutely.
not because of, how articulate or funny or experienced he is, but
Uh-huh.
he quite literally was one of the people I was listening most closely to as I was figuring this out.
Yeah.
Well, so when I had the, like, not panic, but like the holy cow, saving this much money in the bank is a pretty bad thing. What's going to happen with the
Mm-hmm.
macro? What's going to happen? He and Lynn and Lavish and Dylan LeClaire, and there's a bunch of others, um, helped me figure out, like, I should get out of the market too now, right? And I did that before 2022 happened. So I, like, really saved myself probably years worth of work as a result.
Yeah.
Thanks to them, right? So anyway, I run into Foss. We chatted a couple times in DMs on Twitter, but he wouldn't remember me from the 1,000 other people that talked.
Yeah.
But we ran into each other at Pacific Bitcoin, like over coffee sort of thing at a picnic table. And he kind of said, "Hey, come sit down, yeah, I remember your name on Twitter or whatever." And I was like, "Listen," and we just talked, shot the shit for a while. And I was like, "Hey man, can I ask your advice on something? I just want to get, like, your take on this." And I kind of told him a bit about what I was doing in my fiat job, and which I'm good at and I enjoy and pays the bills, and it's like there's no complaints here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, first world problem. Could I do even better by some kind of a role in Bitcoin, right? So I'm giving him the sort of, like, this is my background, this is what I do, this is what I'm good at. Can you see a place where, since you've seen this ecosystem probably more broadly than I have, where I could point these talents, right? Do I go try to work for, I don't know, Swan or whatever, right? And he's like, "You have influence at your company?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." He's like, "By your title, I can tell you're underplaying that." He's like, your job, your Bitcoin job, is to get Bitcoin on the balance sheet of your company.
Yeah.
Which was like a aha moment for me, right? Don't try to be
For
something
sure.
you're not, and, like, go try to pursue a thing that, like, you're not good at yet. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
well into my 40s, right? I'm not gonna learn how to code and be a good coder at this point, probably.
Yeah.
And I maybe if I put my mind to it, but I don't want to. So do my talents, skills, whatever, lend themselves to Bitcoin? There's probably a few ways they do directly, but then indirectly, but actually directly, if I can convince leadership at my company or whatever next company I might work at that Bitcoin should be on the balance sheet, that's way more. That's going to be worth more dollars than all the plebs I could possibly convince that they should invest in it, right? And that they should be socking away for the future and for their family's future in this asset.
For
So
sure.
it was a poignant sort of like comment, and it struck me as like, oh wow, that
Yeah.
settled me right down. Like I don't even have to think about this. Not that I wouldn't be entertained or be interested in
Right.
opportunities in
So
space, but yeah.
you actually answered a question that I had forgotten because I think I steamrolled you with like three at a time, which were people that had influenced you. So you
Mm,
rattled off Lynn and
yeah.
Dylan and Foss, and I know there was more from previous conversations. Um, a follow-up question to that is, have you been able to talk to anybody at your company about getting Bitcoin on the balance sheet?
I haven't. And what I quickly realized is my first job is to take the to get the point where we take the company public
Hmm.
and then do it. Because right now, that money is other people's money,
Right.
right? It's a series whatever funded tech company. And we couldn't responsibly take that investor's dollars that we promised to use one way and then put it over here and
Right.
another way.
What
So
is your like tier of leadership or role or job description or title at your company?
I'm vice president.
Oh, okay.
So
Um,
I report to our chief revenue officer, which, I'm like the right hand of the CRO,
for
basically,
sure.
which would let me, and, I just got off the phone with the founder of the company, spending an hour chatting about a topic just before we got on. So,
Oh, nice.
yeah, there's no barrier to
Yeah,
the conversation. It's simply a fiscally irresponsible thing to do today
for sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
when investors have put dollars to work to do something very specific. We can't
Yeah.
go and change that.
Yep. Absolutely. But
But
this kind of rolls into something that I you and I were on, well, I was on the same path as you, but I failed. But this transitions nicely into that topic, which is all the listeners that are out there. You might work at a sawmill, or you might do what you think is, a trivial job. But if you're stacking satoshis, if you're allocating a portion of that in and basically converting it into the Bitcoin network, I don't like the term buying Bitcoin personally, because to me, that still seems very fiat, because you're still measuring, and your brain is still brainwashed into measuring value with that system. I like to think of two separate systems, completely separate from one another, and I am actually opting the value out of this
yes,
system into this other system, and that's what gives it value, is my vote. And my vote is I'm opting this value from this system, and I'm opting it over here.
totally agree with you. And
And
I may have misspoken when I used the term buying. Yeah.
no, I do it all the time, and I look at
Well,
price, and I make all the same mistakes. I talk shit to people on Twitter and catch myself later going, that was completely worthless.
yeah, yeah.
So I mean, don't feel bad. It's just the whole process of my journey in Bitcoin has been insane, because I've been like the toxic asshole. I've been this, I've been that. I've had highs and lows, and now it's just like price. Nothing really affects me anymore, because I realize there's 21 million, blah blah blah, and it to me, it's just like, yeah, I'm numb to all that now.
Yeah.
But the topic I was getting to was, you successfully DCA'd every hour
Yeah.
of 2022. You DCA'd every hour, correct?
Yep.
Tell us
That's
about
correct.
that. That's pretty cool.
So coming out of 21, November-ish, peak, peak of the S&P 500, Dow, everything, right? Was the time where I made the like gut call. I'm converting everything to cash, meaning I literally went from like a very equity-based system of wealth for decades to I'm just going to turn it all into cash tomorrow. No bonds, no stocks, nothing. And I was like, look, if I'm wrong, the number stays the same. If I'm right, the number stays the same. Right. And I was
Yeah.
right. And the rest of the market tumbled over the next few quarters. So it turned out to be a good move. And then the question was like, okay, well, if I'm going to buy, when do I buy?
Yeah. How? Yeah.
And
When?
how, yeah.
Yeah.
And so my New Year's resolution was, I'm just going to buy every hour this year, no matter what the price is. It'll be a minimum of this amount and a maximum of this amount. And I just toggle between those depending on maybe what the price action for the week or month was, just to like, hedge a little bit.
Yep.
And yeah, I bought every hour of 2022. Come whenever, if there's a fiat tax thing someday where I have to deal with that, it's probably going to be painful.
Well,
But
I mean, until you sell
I've
or
never
buy
sold.
or
I've never
yeah.
sold a Satoshi,
Oh,
right?
so you're
So,
good.
I mean, I don't plan on doing it anytime.
Yeah.
I'll spend it, but I probably won't ever convert it. And yeah, it was cool. I mean, turns out it stacks way more than you think it would, right?
Yeah.
Especially when the price drops. So while we were at Pacific Bitcoin, I think we hit 15.5, like one of the hours we were sitting there, right?
The Pacific Bitcoin was
The bottom, right?
scam, the scam bankrupt fraud fiasco. So really, it was probably the absolute worst time as far as all the indicators and price and all, everything looked a shambles, but you couldn't tell. Yeah, you couldn't tell by everybody we were around,
So the best thing about that was everyone was stoked.
Yeah, right? That was amazing.
There's a couple thousand people with smiles on their face. Yep. This is awesome, right? And where if you didn't understand, you would be like, "What the heck is wrong with these people? Like, their asset class is tumbling."
Yep.
Yeah, I had a conversation like that in the airport on the way out, actually. So I was like, oh, I'm stoked. This is great,
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I bought every hour. The next thing I did that was a big move that's happened since we last talked, holiday period and into like the beginning of this year, is I moved a 401k's worth of stuff over to Swan in an IRA.
Oh.
So now I'm part of their IRA product, which is fascinating.
I might have to do that.
You know what was really cool about it? You have time for a quick story about how that happened?
Hit us. Oh, hey, actually, I'm going to jump in real quick because I wanted to let you know. I DCA'd for probably about 6 months total of 2022. But since I talked to you at the Pacific Bitcoin conference, you inspired me. So since then, every hour, baby. And I've been doing the same thing. Like I go, I have my limits, but so it's since November, it's been game on every hour. So
it feels great, right?
Oh man. And I rest easy. I don't,
I used to have a ritual like on a Sunday morning. This is what I would do. I would grab a coffee. I pull up James Lavish's newsletter, which I highly recommend.
Comes out Sundays.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I get it.
Pull that up. Get my wallet out and self-custody, whatever that like week's take was.
Oh yeah.
And I just do that every week and keep moving it over, right?
I wait until and I look and I go, oh shit, I better move that. And that's probably not as smart of a plan. Yeah. Then I move it to like a hot wallet on my phone. Then I move it finally to cold storage when that wallet goes, oh shit, that's way too big.
Okay.
So it's a two-step oh shit process of, wow, there's way too much money right there.
Yeah, I was doing the one step.
That's smart because you have a system. Mine is just like
I was looking at it and going. Yeah, I would call it more ritual than system. I really like coffee. Yeah, I really like the newsletter, and I would just sort of have my Bitcoin half hour.
I like that
Sunday morning. It was really cool, and it felt great, right? It's like, every hour of the week that sort of just went on autopilot. Then I self-custody it. Feel great about that, right? And so
love it. Anyway, I got you. I went.
So stacked a bunch that way in 22, and then end of 22. All the stuff. I'm not trying to get into like personal finance stuff. Just right. It is more important. I had a bunch of like equities and bonds and that type of thing. Listening to like Lynn and Foss and Dylan and Dr. Bear and like those folks, I'm like, man, this is probably a bad idea. I converted all to cash, but now the cash is just sitting in an account like that I can't touch, not until I retire or take a huge penalty.
Right.
Well, I'm like, well, that's the same problem I had a couple years before, right? In this environment, macro wise, it's good to have cash, so it's melting less fast than everything else, which is, okay. But then I was like, man, I got to get it somewhere where I can get exposure to assets I want, right? Like Bitcoin.
Right.
So I stumble across Swan and at the time Casa. I looked at Casa the day they turned the Ethereum stuff on and went like, we're off the list.
Oh
And Unchained Capital, right? So
yeah.
for your listeners, not to get like too nerdy on this or legal because I'm not a lawyer. There's this idea of custody in an IRA.
Mm-hmm.
Unfettered command is the term they use in legal speak for you can have gold, for instance, in an IRA and keep the tax advantage, even though the asset is gold, but you can't custody the gold. Some third party has to watch over that and report to the
You're
IRS.
talking actual physical gold, not paper.
Yeah. Any kind of
or
gold.
either. Okay. Okay.
The point is there's a court case, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head because it's late, but this woman took gold coins basically and like had them under her mattress, but was calling it an IRA.
Oh,
You can't
okay.
do that because the IRS can't see what you're doing with that stuff. Therefore, you can't benefit from the tax advantages of an IRA.
Got you.
So
Okay.
Spawn and Unchained Capital and a few others have come up with systems where you can have Bitcoin exposure in an IRA, which folks listening to you would want.
Right.
But then there's this question of unfettered command. Well, the whole point of Bitcoin is to custody your asset, right?
Right.
So why do you want the counterparty risk in the IRA?
Right.
And so far, there's a little bit of a battle, or not battle. There's a lack of legal precedent for self-custody. You can't just self-custody it, as far as I can tell.
Okay.
So Swan keeps it in a trust, prime trust. So you've got counterparty risk, but it's a trust. It's very highly regulated, and if prime trust goes down, there's problems in our whole industry, by the way. So there's that. And then Unchained Capital does, and others. I can't remember the other one that I looked at. Sorry, multi-sig. So one wallet with 3 keys.
Right.
They keep 1. You get 2. You can only do something to the assets with 2 keys.
Right.
So the norm is keep 2, put 1 somewhere super safe you never touch. Use one that you have and one that they have to do anything in that wallet.
Sure.
Therefore, they can report what's going on in that wallet.
Okay.
And by the way, if you plug in your 2 and do something, they can report it at least.
Yeah.
But no lawyer has like stood up in court and defended that idea as not equaling unfettered command. So there's this cool technological idea where you can have the benefits of an IRA and custody and control of your asset.
Okay.
Which Bitcoin would uniquely allow you to do.
Sure.
A gold coin, which you have to have as a third party. Swan, my understanding is, as soon as there is like legal precedent for it, we'll do the multi-sig like solution. So between those 2 choices, I went with Swan.
Okay.
The main reason is because they're more toxic.
Yeah. Yeah. Calling people out on their bullshit.
Yeah.
So basically, this just it acts just like any traditional IRA where you can start dipping in or cashing out at age whatever it is, 59 or whatever the minimum age is, without the tax implications of, but if you dip in it early, you're going to get zinged the quarter or whatever tax bracket you're in or whatever. Okay. So it's basically just your IRA in the form of Bitcoin versus any traditional things, which most people don't even manage themselves anyway. They just let, have a bunch of ETF money and,
exactly. Yeah.
some other plan managed by a quote unquote professional. So
yeah, and I will continue to diversify.
Sure.
I'm not going to go 100% Bitcoin. I think the only like completely stupid amounts of Bitcoin to have are 0% and 100%. Those are the only things that are like really dumb. 99 is probably the next stupidest, and then 98, and then 97.
Yeah.
Eventually get to the point where like your portfolio makes sense for you.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a number in mind. I'm kind of like geared toward that. And then I'll take the rest and I'll like try to find something attractive, which currently cash is the only thing attractive. I don't know, farmland, food.
Well, I think it really depends on, we're all talking probabilities here because there's very few, other than, what is it, death and taxes. I mean, so probabilities of certain things happening in the future is basically what we're wagering on.
Right.
And, you know, if things got really, really bad, farmland, bullets, and, you know, whiskey and seeds and animals would be great. But
Yep.
it's like, what are you thinking? And I agree with you, until we flip-flop the fiat system. Living in a fiat world, we're required to, you know, pay for things using this, even though there are alternative ways, and I'm a firm believer in that. But at the same time, you know, I'm not a 100% in. I'm, you know, I'm super convicted and I'm in deep, but I do respect those people that are, you know, to me, they're vanguards that are 100% in. So I respect your opinion because I respect, you know,
I respect the 100% people's opinion.
yeah,
If
exactly. So
they've
yeah,
come
me
to that
too.
conclusion,
So I'm
it's
not
their,
against them, and
Yep.
I'm all about people that are even at 1 or 5%. You know, I'm like, great, that's amazing. Like
Yep.
they get it a little bit, you know, and to me, you know, I respect everybody in between too. So I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes because I get it, and it's all about what makes you sleep easy at night, or
Totally.
what do you think, because you're responsible for the person in the mirror. You need to figure out your personal finances for yourself, for your family, and what you think you need to do to make sure that they eat and they have a place to sleep and all of that stuff. So you know, my strategy is a little bit different because my background's been, you know, like more gambly. You know, I've had, you know, uh, multiple divorces and multiple, you know, I've taken a lot of chances. And so that's just my personality. And you know,
Well,
I was a
that's
poker player, so I can lose, you know, thousands of dollars in one hand or win thousands, and it doesn't bother me. So
yeah.
that's all about the person. And so I respect all of those because to me it's about, there's a lot into that equation. So it's all about
Well, look,
probabilities, possibilities, and I like to talk about what other, you know, what other people's thoughts are on this thing, and I respect those thoughts, and you
totally.
know, and on what they think's going to happen coming up, because a lot of Bitcoiners have been right on the money for the last several years that I've been keeping my ear to the ground. So
Totally. Yeah. And so you bring up this notion of gambling. I was having this thought earlier this week. I don't remember if I was listening to something or just occurred to me, but with, how do I put this? It's much harder for me to buy a house than it was for my dad. It was much harder for him to buy a house than it was for his dad, and on and on and on. Right? Why? Because it's debasing before our eyes. Right? I don't care if it's 2%, 5%, 10%. It's just all bad. And so now we're at a point where you could have a normal or good job for your whole life, and you can't retire. You have to keep working.
Yep.
So what does that mean? You must gamble.
Right.
You have to.
Yep.
That's the only choice people are left with at this point, right?
Yep.
One,
For sure.
live in austerity and gamble is your only hope of like coming out even at the end.
Yep.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, you see these old timers talking about compounded interest and all this stuff, and all of these antiquated techniques for retiring, and you can blow these 60-40 portfolio crap, you know, away, and that's all history, you know.
Yeah.
I really think we're at a place where, and I think it's starting in certain countries too, because it's not just our money printer that when it fires up, it's going to create, you know, all this excess liquidity again. But you know, other countries are going to fire theirs up, you know, because
Well,
it's like, and
they'll
a
be
lot of these people in other countries are going to opt into the Bitcoin network as well. I mean,
for
maybe
sure.
that will be what really kicks us off as far as adoption goes. Isn't necessarily us here in America, but maybe, you know, third world countries.
I
You know,
agree. I'm
who
totally
knows?
agree. They'll see the value of it
For sure.
as soon as they hear and learn about it. They'll know exactly what it is and exactly why it's important because they've experienced the exact things that we're all barely even scratching the surface of and worried about.
Yeah. You talked about cash earlier as well, and the same people you mentioned influenced me greatly to run to some cash, which I did, and have and had a bunch of dry powder. Um I I don't like to take credit for making the right calls, but with a lot of putting in a lot of time researching, I was able to actually grow a lot via placing bets with like MicroStrategy and different
Sure.
things. And like as soon as I heard Saylor was a Bitcoin guy, like I think I listened to the first two podcasts he did like the day they came out, and then I was buying MicroStrategy and a
Yeah.
lot of it, and then I was cashing out as I realized the MicroStrategy and things were tethered with the markets, and so then I was like, ooh, I kept my ear to the ground, and I thought it would be wise for me to cash a lot of it out. So I was smart and lucky because was buying in the 100 and mid 100 and what something range and cashing out at not at the peak but in the 800 ranges and stuff. So I had some cash sitting around,
Mhm.
and I started buying MicroStrategy back I don't know, a month ago probably. I could double check, but and I'm not MicroStrategy rich or anything, but I have triple digits plural worth of MicroStrategy now, and still have a ton of cash sitting on the side because I've been able to manage my own 401k and using like Bitcoin exposed things and a ton of different mining stocks and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I've been able to beef it up. But I'm curious because I'm kind of wondering when to pull the trigger. You know what I mean? Like, there's no such thing as advice, but I do appreciate
Yeah.
any thoughts about like what the hell's going on right now. Like,
So what I would do if I were in the situation you just described,
yeah,
is, and I could introduce you to exactly who you should talk to, by the way. I would open up IRA.
yeah,
That's contribute the maximum, right? Get that rolling, get the tax advantage of that because you could deduct that contribution from your taxes. Like you do it this year if you want, or no, you can't. Yeah, you can do it this year. Not this year's taxes, but 2023.
right.
What you're going to pay in 2024. And that's just another vehicle for exposure there. That's Bitcoin only. So whatever goes in there, you should think is either Bitcoin or cash,
Yeah.
right? They've got the same person I'll introduce you to will also describe other things they're doing. Mortgages. There's a lot of.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because see, that's another thing is we had this talk also at the conference, which was you were talking, you and your wife were speaking about a house, and I'm kind of in a similar situation where I'm thinking, what's the good of just storing all this value away for the future when you're not guaranteed the future, and you could actually upgrade your living conditions now. Like, hey, I want to take a step up with housing. I want to, like I peeled some sats off and upgraded a vehicle recently, or well, two actually, but that's another story. So if you never take advantage of that, then what's the point? I mean,
Totally.
So timing these kinds of things, like I just saw today that interest rates for like a average 30-year mortgage are almost 7% now.
Yeah.
I mean, this is insanity.
So
like we haven't even seen the biggest pile of shit hasn't hit the fan yet.
no, not even
Just
close.
the little flakes have hit. So
Not even close.
I'm still thinking like maybe just pumping the brakes on a lot of this because I have enough, saved up, kind of like you're saying, where it's like, well, I was gonna maybe deploy some of this capital into like upgrading my housing, and so like I'm in a bigger conundrum than just like I'm trying to save some tax money and put some money away for the future, because I'm still rolling with, like I'm using fold card to, I'm stacking sats wherever I can, including my, my daily, like if it weren't for the fact that I don't want to spend sats, I'd probably, quit my job and go try to do something in Bitcoin. But I really think that this is a great time to accumulate Bitcoin. This is
totally
like, the 1849s or whatever, when people were picking up gold nuggets out of some creeks before the big mad gold rush started. But I think that's where we're at. So it's like I'm picking nuggets up right out of the creek without having to, dig a mine shaft into the hill. So anyway, I didn't mean to bullguard the
no,
because I think you were going to say something.
Well, you mentioned the buying a house thing, right? So I'll tie this back to when we're talking about the list of like things people are interested in and the things that would get people to like either just get it and be good or want to go dig deeper.
Right.
Um, my wife, like a lot of normal people, was thinking, well, we have to buy a house because that's what you do, right?
Right.
You need property and you need the equity to grow, right? And housing prices go up and blah, blah, blah. And she's right. And so that's why we were saving all that money. And she didn't understand Bitcoin like one iota.
Yeah.
She understands like the digital world, don't get me wrong, but like she was not connecting this to reality for herself.
Mm-hmm.
Nor is she the type of personality that would go and dig and go down the rabbit holes that I go down. She'll go down a rabbit hole on like cooking or like wine
Yeah.
or the arts, right? Things that she's passionate about, which is great. So we're different but complementary that way. Well,
Right.
the way I got her to like get Bitcoin was I was like, think of it as equity
Mm.
in property.
Mm-hmm.
This is a property that we own and we now have equity, but we can live anywhere we want with it. So we can rent the house that we like anywhere we want, anytime we want, deal with cash flow month to month, year to year, whatever. But our equity is sitting in our heads.
Yeah.
Right? Sorry, my light's going on. And that's infinite flexibility in terms of like equity.
Right.
By the way, there's no maintenance cost. By the way, there's no property tax.
Yeah.
And we can up and move anytime we want.
So it's coincidental that your light flashed on right there, because that's what made the light flash on in her mind.
Yeah. It relaxed her completely. And
Yeah.
like, we don't have a house, we don't have a house, we don't have a house.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, we have all the things we want in a house, which is equity,
Right.
savings, like value in the future, right? You don't want to like be locked down and live in one building, do you? You want to be able to live in the building you want to live in, but we might want to change that next week or
Mm-hmm.
not next week, but you follow what I mean, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Or live in another country or whatever
Yep.
the case may be. So that really clicked for her in a way that like really relaxed her. And then it's more like, okay, go do your thing then.
Oh, good.
You go figure that out. I do that part of our household. She does most of the other stuff.
Yeah.
That's important.
So that's kind of a like a sailor always talks about the, property analogy, where it's property, digital property.
Well, it is, right?
No, for sure. Yeah.
It's gold or a commodity or whatever you
Yep.
want to think of, right?
Yep.
It's taxed like equity value in a property.
Mm-hmm.
It's unconfiscatable. There's no one going to try to like take your house from you and build a highway through your yard.
Yeah.
And there's no maintenance cost and there's no property tax.
It blows my mind that like just simple things like that. If anyone really either believed you or was like, so what you're really saying is there's truly 21 million of these things.
Yep.
And they are truly verifiable by even me if I wanted to.
Yep.
But a whole world full of computers, like,
yep.
And what wouldn't, like, for me, my mind's already just going nuts, like, holy shit, this seems too good to be true. I don't understand why people don't get this and don't at least try to, because when I hear something that seems too good to be true, I either dismiss it. Well, maybe that's what they do, maybe they just dismiss it, but like I want to figure it out, so I start looking into it, and so I'm thinking, like, I just don't understand why people aren't just chomping at the bit and salivating to just dive in and learn.
I think the reason is that my guess is that the pain is not implicated yet for them.
Yeah.
So I had that because I had money sitting around and like I'm a math guy and kind of went, hey, this is messed up. I'm about to get diluted massively, and I've worked 20 years for this stuff, right?
Right. So that's what gave you the push.
So it's something there that would have to get people to go. So my wife's pain was like, we don't have a house, we don't have a that's the solution for that, right? People in the developing world have rapid inflation, hostile regime, et cetera. They've got plenty of pain. They'll recognize it instantly.
Yeah.
For people here who don't think about it, that's another thing I've been working on, is like, how do you explain the debt spiral to someone who like really doesn't think about it?
Yeah.
Well, I'll give it to you. This is what I think. I took all the numbers basically for the federal budget and the deficit and the debt, and I just turned them into numbers that people can relate to. So, Lauren, we have a household. Our income is $42,000 a year.
Me and you?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a house we live in. We get 42,000 that comes in. This is what I tell you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Really, that means 4.2 trillion, by the way, but I'm using a number that people can relate to.
Wow. Yeah, yeah.
We're going to spend $60,000 this year. And we don't have a choice. We're going to spend it.
Right.
So we're down 18K no matter what. We got to pay for that somehow. And we have $315,000 in credit card debt already. The only thing we can do is take out another credit card to pay for the 18.
Yep.
Which adds 18 to the 315. And the new credit card is a worse interest rate than the last credit cards.
Yep.
That's it.
That's what we're doing.
That's what we're doing. And then the other way to tell that story is to do all the things, and instead of go credit card, say, but we have a printer in the basement.
Yeah.
And when we go downstairs, we can print the money that we need to cover up our monthly bills. But every time we do that, it adds to the 315 and makes everybody in the world hate us.
Right.
And disenfranchises and hurts the middle class and poor.
Right. And it dilutes your purchasing power. It's like,
well, not ours. We could print all we want.
Well, that's true too. Yeah. I mean, it does to a certain extent, but we don't suffer the greatest consequences of that.
It's actually good for us.
We farm that out. Yeah.
Actually, it's good for us to print. You know why? Because it dilutes the value of the 315 that we owe.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, it's us defaulting on our obligations. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah,
that's what I use to like connect to people. Like, I know you don't think it's your problem, but like it's everybody's problem.
Yeah.
This is what's going on, right? And then they're like, well, it's so-and-so in office, or it's this program.
Right.
I'm like, guys, I don't care who's in office. Doesn't matter.
Nope.
No amount. So imagine this. You're going to vote for someone, right? Here's what they're going to tell you. I'm going to tax you more so that I can make more than 42 grand a year. And I'm going to give you less for it so that I could spend less than 60 a year. So who is going to win an election on any party? I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
You say, I'm going to tax the constituency more and give them less in return. It's never happening.
Right.
So we are stuck. Never mind that it's mathematically impossible to undo all this.
Right.
It is not happening.
Right. Correct.
So nope, stop blaming Omnibus or your favorite or least favorite politician. It's irrelevant. It does not matter. They're going to deficit spend.
Right.
And the Fed will have to step in to fix this stuff.
Yes.
And that 315K or the 31.5 trillion that we owe, I think the blended rate right now is like 2%, 2%. So we have like a $350-400 billion payment this year.
Yeah.
I think in 2 years or 3 years, half of it rolls over to whatever the new interest rate is, which we know is 4.5, 5.
Yeah.
Well, a 5% interest on 331 trillion is like 1.5 trillion in just interest.
Yeah.
Right. That doesn't help us at all. That gets us nowhere. It's just what we owe the bondholders. That's it.
This is insane. It's
completely insane.
Yeah.
It's so insane that it's funny.
Yeah.
Like you could only laugh and be like, these people are beyond imbecile.
Yeah.
Like it's a level beyond ignorant. Like I don't even know how to describe how messed up that is.
Yeah, we just keep adding zeros on. I mean, we're gonna have to go to, what is it, quintillion is the next term in math to describe the next numbers up. I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
It's insane.
But I mean, I think that the piper will be paid. It's just a question of when and how. Like a lot of theories, a lot of Bitcoin minds out there saying, other countries are going to get tired of being
Sure.
Uncle Sam's bee and just go, no, 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 we're not going to exchange goods and services using US dollars anymore. We're going
Course
to
not.
use a basket of currencies, or we're going to use, that digital currency or this or that other thing. And I think, maybe when enough countries stand up and start doing that, maybe that would be the point at which we lose the ability to hit print on our printer. We lose
Yeah.
the reserve status of the world currency. So
Yeah, it won't
who
be.
knows? But
Yeah, I don't
something like
believe.
that.
Yeah, I don't believe it'll be another currency. I think we'll just go to
Hmm.
like commodity trade sort of
Sure.
level, and you could argue Bitcoin's a commodity. Maybe it fits in there too.
Right.
But it won't be like, the pound takes over. That's not
Right.
happening.
Yeah.
All the other currencies are worse off than, the dollar is just like the least dirty shirt in the laundry, right?
Right.
They're
Yep.
all bad.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, I think some of this is kicked off already when you have, nations holding secret meetings,
totally.
agreeing to sell, oil to another country using, yuan or whatever their currency is, which is kind of a violation a little bit of the Bretton Woods agreement or whatever.
Yep.
So I think that maybe countries are finally starting to wake up to the fact that they get screwed the most when we here in America hit the print button. So who knows, like you said, what that'll be or what it'll end up. But that's probably the best theory that I've heard from the Bitcoin community on what will finally be the breaking point of us being able to access the printer to that degree.
Yeah, I mean, Todd's not a Putin fan, but
Right.
anytime you listen to him talk, he's not talking about like the land mass of
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine. He's talking. He's just flipping the table over and going, "I'm fed up. I'm
Right.
tired of denominating my resources in dollars,
Mm-hmm.
which you get to print."
Yep.
So forget. I mean, that effectively means you and the United States can print energy.
Right.
We just make up dollars and buy barrels of oil with it, right?
Right.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So never mind other trade gets denominated in it, or that other countries save in U.S. treasuries, which is the 31.5 trillion that we've got to pay interest on.
Right.
It's the savings mechanism for the world, and it's also the denomination for like energy and other trade.
Yeah.
Well, if we could just change it, wouldn't you be
Mm-hmm.
mad?
Yeah.
Right? That would. I
I'm
wouldn't
not
tolerate that.
I'm not 100% certain that no, I'll even go further and say we do hurt a segment of our own populace, and that is um the people that aren't making over 50 grand a year. They really do get screwed the worst. The people on
Totally.
fixed incomes, the people on, retirees, ones who's, they did all those traditional things and said, okay, if I plan, for retirement and I make it to 90, then I'll need this amount of money. Well, all of those things just get blown up when we keep printing
Totally.
money too, so if you
Anybody?
lack the ability to keep up fiscally with all of this, printing and inflated pricing and everything else, if you can't do it, you're going to continue to get kicked down to the bottom.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's like sand on a beach, where the biggest beaches collect the most sand too. And so a lot of the money ends up in, the money that just gets puked out all over, well, more selectively sent to bailouts and whatnot, but it ends up in the same places. And the crazy part is that the smart money was doing things like you talked about, where they were running to cash a year ago and stuff, because they could see the writing on the wall and know what's coming, and they got people managing, and yet the little guy, they're still throwing money in their 60/40 portfolio and stuff. So
Well, it's worse than that. I mean,
yeah.
only the top 45% of the U.S. population has a 401k, has assets of any
Right.
kind. So you got half the population who doesn't have assets.
Yeah.
So they live in cash, which means they get completely destroyed.
Right.
Right. And so the wealth gap, I argue with people all the time in my neighborhood. They're like, the rich this, the rich that. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
rich aren't getting richer. It's worse than that. The poor are getting poorer.
Right.
That's the gap. It goes
That's exactly
that
true.
way, not that way.
Yep.
A little bit of both, right? I'm just
Right.
making the illustration that don't think because you're like chugging along, you make 50K, 50K, you're okay. You're not. You're
Right.
getting worse.
Yep.
Relative to your own standard, never mind what everybody else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Then Lavish had a tweet today. I think he was saying since 2020, of all the wealth generated since 2020, so 3 years, 2.5 years, 2 years, 3 years, of all the wealth generated, 1/3 went to the top 1%.
Yeah. Yep.
Like if you adjust that for inflation and stuff, it's anyway, it gets messy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
If you're the bottom half of society, right? You don't even want to use the word bottom. If you're on that side,
Yeah,
of asset holding or not, you get eviscerated.
yes. Right. Yeah, I used to go into these kind of discussions with my dad, who was a college professor and actually taught business, but he would point to things like the stock market as, a good measure of the health of a, economy and a society and whatnot. And I would say that's a horrible measure. Until 401k plans even became a thing, that percentage you mentioned, which when I looked, it was around 50% of, I think you put it just under 50%, but who cares? It's about that. That actually shot way up before the 401k plan, when people basically were forced out of their old pensions, which were basically covered by whatever the government or whatever company they worked at, and they were rolled into these, were forced into these 401k plans and stuff. That's what. And then most of those people don't even manage their own stuff or don't even have a clue what's going on. They just pick A, B, or C, and it just gets thrown in there. So before that happened, there was a much smaller portion of the population that was even invested in any kind of stocks or bonds or anything at all. So that's what even brought that number up to, 50% or whatever.
Because
so
people have to gamble.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And a ton of those people are losing their ass in that too. So no, we're fucked.
Not to just, that's a thud, but like that is how it is, and it's not going to get better.
Yeah.
And the only way to cover up the massive deficit and the increasing deficit we're going to have as a nation, if you look at the White House budget for the next 10 years, they think that the interest payment on the debt is going to be like 350 billion.
Yeah.
That's 1%.
Yeah.
How? We're adding to it every year, and the interest rate on everything. I don't care if you've got a 2-month, 3-month, or a 5-year, or a 10-year, or 30, all of it was lower than the percentage rates we're at right now.
Oh man.
As soon as that stuff rolls over,
yes.
And here's the thing, right? They have two choices. You could default and let U.S. Treasuries default.
Right.
Well, that's Armageddon.
Right. Yep.
That is people starving across the world type of bad news.
Yeah.
Or you have to debase the currency.
Yep.
So they're gonna debase.
So we already know what's gonna happen. Yeah. Right? Yeah, for sure.
And it'll be face melting when they have to do it to the level that they have to do it, and assets will moon as a result, and the wealth gap will go right.
For sure.
Remember, the wealth gap that's you keeping up. That's not you getting wealthier. You're wealthier relative to folks, and that's maybe important to some degree. But what are we going to do with the bottom 50% of the people who don't have assets?
For sure.
Here's what we're going to do, Lauren. We're going to vote in people with a program to spend money that we don't have to give them money, which makes the problem worse.
Oh yeah,
that's the weird, inescapable, how moronic this whole thing is.
For sure.
Those are the people that will win the votes, that will hand out checks to people out of money that we printed, which will make their life worse.
Yep.
And that snowball will just get worse and worse until, nobody knows exactly what the really bad thing looks like.
Right. Yeah, I like to listen to counter perspectives too, just to try to stay in check with things. And I listen to the Bitcoiner Ansel, I forgot his last name and stuff, but there's still voices out there that are talking soft landing, that are talking, oh, this and this, but I can't wrap my head around anything looking positive. I mean, we haven't even seen we haven't even seen any ramifications of any of these interest hikes yet. We haven't seen people their adjustable rate mortgages. We haven't seen zombie companies trying to refinance their debt. We haven't seen, and people don't realize how many of these zombie companies are out there. We see credit card debt at all-time highs. We see basically bubbles everywhere from government all the way across the line. How the fuck could this turn out good? How could this turn out soft? It's impossible. It can't.
It just depends on how you define soft, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They can print enough money to like ease the drop,
to make the next swing bigger.
Oh my God, it'll make the next one even exponentially worse.
The next spiral,
right? Yeah. That's all that's been happening for the last whatever, 20 years.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
Like, right. We're just in a worse cycle than the last.
Yes. Right. The echo chamber refers to that as kicking the can down the road. Yeah.
And so I'm not going to pretend to like predict what any of that really looks like.
Yeah.
The point of adoption is get insurance against that, if you want to think of it that way.
Right.
If you want to think of it that way. Diversify, if you want to think of it that way. You know, whatever your method, whatever the thing that connects it for you is.
Right.
Mine is opt out. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I convert what I've earned in fiat to Bitcoin, I'm like, it's gone forever. Out of the system, and it's in another system, and it's never.
For sure.
I'm never selling it. That's mine.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Plus, I'm of the opinion that I want to be strategic in this. Like when I opt something in, it's in there forever. So that's why I know Bitcoin will never go to zero, because I'm never selling mine. You know, so I know it's in that system forever. Sure. And when I hold my value in there, and I know that people like you do the same thing, and I trust in this network of humans more than I trust in the ones that are calling the shots on top that we've talked about. And I think, like we talked about earlier, that's the only thing missing from the equation is just us, because we the people decide and have decided what we use to exchange value in society anyway. Even, you know, gold, money, anything we've ever used as money, it's been the masses of people that's decided, and we've just ran with it. You know, it's like gold's not the most rare metal, it's not the blah 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 blah. So the only thing missing from our network is whatever percentage that is, whatever number that is, opting in. And once we hit that, whatever, you know, apex that is, or whatever it is, then it's game over. And so as I rotate and opt my value from this shit network into one that's actually has parameters, it has limits, it can't be corrupted, it can't be bastardized, it can't have a middleman come in and lie. It's truth, digital truth. Once I opted in, it's there forever. But along the way, I want to be super smart, because I plan on opting as many in as I can. And so I am, you know, keeping some of this shit on the side, this crap money, because I know that I could probably get more of these things in the future if I time this thing perfectly. But I'm not going to put my whole strategy into that at all. But I am going to maybe take a small percentage and go, hey, I'm going to go ahead and wait, because if this is, you know, if this hits this, or if I know they're going to hit the print button, I know that shit's going to just hit the fan, then I'm going to just shove all my chips in the middle at this time. You know what I mean? So I still play probabilities. So that's why I respect everybody's strategy, because the people that are 100 in right now, they're just vanguards, because they're just like, hey man, I'm all in, and I love it. I love those guys. But at the same point, I'm going, well, anything that I'm already all in is in there forever, you know, and I still have some dry powder sitting here, and I still have my ear to the ground, and I'm just waiting. And you know, I've got, as a poker player, it's chips in the middle. So I mean, I feel my hands getting close, you know. it's just going, I'm all in soon enough, you know. So we can't sustain this as a country for very much longer. And well, you know, I think shit's going to start hitting the fan in a major way this year, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Of all that I've like kind of understood, studied, tried to, again, mechanical engineering talking, right? I'm not an economist, but the way I calculate value and kind of look at all that stuff and sort of root cause what's happening and try to understand what might happen as a result of what is happening. It's going to happen everywhere else first.
Yeah.
Also.
Right.
So we're going to be like in this super privileged position either because we've got US treasuries, or because we've got the biggest military, or because we're the hardest to like attack, or whatever.
Right.
We're going to get to watch it unfold in other places. Lebanon, Sri Lanka, Nigeria.
We are watching it in real time, aren't we? Yeah.
And it's just going to keep happening. Japan, England.
Yeah. You know, what's really crazy too, and I think this gets overlooked a lot of the time, is our control over media, dating back a long way. Even Hollywood, we mind fucked the world into thinking that we were just this fucking fantasy land, and people have this false hope about how wonderful and how amazing we are as in America and as America and everything else, you know. And I think that has helped to create this false stigma about America, the, you know, Holy Land or whatever it is, you know. And I think that that continues, but maybe to a greater degree, because we do have you know, algorithms and AI and stuff to help program humans, because we can understand their psyches and we can kind of push them to thinking the way we want to. Like we talked about politics, and politics is one of the ways that people are controlled. It's like we divide these people by whatever, politics, race, just anything, which is fucking insanity. It's like, okay, you have green eyes, you have blue eyes. Like, it's just that stupid. So I think one of the things you don't hear enough of is how we have controlled, and it's smoke and mirrors. It's the man behind the curtain with movies, Hollywood movies and stuff. So it's just another one of those.
That's the, I would say that's the marketing arm of what we've done.
Sure. Yeah.
But the operations arm of what we've done is we've got the reserve currency.
Right.
And which lets us build the biggest military.
Yep.
Which lets us print energy.
Yep.
Well, of course we're going to be the best.
Yeah.
Not because we're better, just because we're cheating.
Right. We're the biggest assholes.
And we happen to market it because we are cheating.
Yeah.
That's the reality, right? So did you and I luck out? Yes. Anybody that complains, well, here's why I say this to friends and family, close friends and family who know me. They're complaining about whatever, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, or who knows. And it gets like bad. And I'm like, listen, you live in a group of humans that's the top 1% of all humans that have ever existed.
That's true.
And you're the top 1% of that group.
Yeah.
I don't care if you make 30 grand in the US. You know, if you're a white, blonde, female, blah, 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 and you make $30,000 in the US, you're better than 99.999% of all humans that ever existed.
Yeah. That's
so
a great point.
The thing you're complaining about might be important in the moment, but I believe fully that you'll get over it and you'll be fine, and that you should appreciate
what
you're in that position, having done none of the work.
Yeah.
All those human beings that existed before you, that built the roads, that built the medicine, that built the financial system, even if it sucks.
Yeah. Right? That's a great point.
And you didn't do it. You contributed nothing. Here you are, right? Just perspective to like think about what you're complaining about today, type of thing.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying we don't try to make it better. We don't try to like go to the next thing, right? Bitcoin, avoid the debt spiral, you know, Armageddon that's coming, all that stuff. My point is only that people get bent out of shape about stuff, way too bent out of shape about stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just not that serious most of the time.
No, that's a great point, and that's probably a good way to start winding it down, because we don't want to miss the moment right now. You know, like this is your life, this moment, and you know, there's people out there in the Bitcoin community even that want to just see it all burn down, and it's like, I really don't, because I really hope this transition would be a smooth one, where, you know, bullets and land and goats and whatever aren't the most valuable things, where we can actually transition and still, you know, have a quality of life similar to what we're used to now. Because it would be hell if some Armageddon event occurred and all hell broke loose. So I don't wish that upon anyone. I really, you know, my hope is that, you know, Bitcoin is used as a tool to improve humanity going forward, because the way I see it now, the current system won't work. It won't be sustainable going forward. And the way we're trending, we're actually trending toward humans destroying themselves, really, because there's the fighting. Like, just I don't even get this whole Ukraine war. I do, I have theories on what really is going on behind the scenes, but really, why do we want to flirt with nuclear weapons? Why do we want to? We should look at, as a humanity, what we have in common. I mean, this is like things you learn in marriage therapy, which is, you start looking at your differences and you're in trouble. House divided against itself won't stand.
Sure.
And that's where we are, in our country, in America, but a lot of the world is in the same position. And it's just like, we have a lot more in common as human beings than we have not in common. And when we strive for that, then we can, maybe someday be able to reach Mars like Elon Musk wants to do, and maybe we will be able to sustain life on Earth, a lot longer because of, we are able to work together to fight things like controversial things like global warming, which, I mean, creationists and evolutionists agree it'll get too hot here at some point, millions of years down the road, but that's another story. But in order to achieve these kinds of goals, we need to work together and we need a different system. So
yeah, so I've been lucky in the businesses I've been in to like travel the world, experience different cultures, work with people, colleagues that are from different cultures.
Yeah,
you're dead on. Like most people are pretty much the same.
Yeah, like to go out and eat food,
different.
hang out together, chat.
Turns out people like to have dinner and like have
listen
a
to
laugh.
music. Yeah,
People
arts. Yeah.
So it's not that hard to connect with folks in that way.
Yeah.
And I want like the best for them, not
For
just
sure.
for me, of course, right? And this, decentralized, flat, nobody owns it, it doesn't play any favorites, right? It's a commodity that you don't have to be physically located next to experience and enjoy, which is a cool idea, right?
Absolutely.
You need a $50 Android phone, you're good to go, right? And most fortunately, more people have those than have bank accounts.
Yeah. Now we can marry the two.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel very positive about, well, I'm a pretty pragmatic, even keeled, but I'll call it like it is. And like I actually got nicknames in my career of like being the guy that come in the room, be like, here's why that won't work. Right. Which is sort of valuable, but also kind of annoying.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we're probably in some pretty big trouble.
Yep.
But like, and this is the only way out.
Yeah.
Type of vibe is what I have.
Yeah.
Will that way out be like glorious and amazing? Will enough
hopefully
countries that have like nice beaches around the world adopt this where you bug out and go there?
Yeah.
All this stuff happens, right? It's kind of what plays in my mind. Like, where am I going to retreat to like get out?
Right.
Like literally opt out physically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then like Lowry's latest thing, which I want to read, is like, there's also no attack vector on it. Like you could go try to invade that little island with all the little Bitcoiners on it, but like it doesn't get you anything.
No. Yeah.
You can kill them.
Yeah.
Yes. But like that doesn't do you a lot of good. There's some serious cost in doing that, not a lot of benefit.
Right. Yeah. So we don't all want to be on one beach either then.
Yeah.
Spread your nodes around the world. Keep them there.
So I just got my node up and running.
Nice.
Here in the last little while. Yeah. Cool experience.
Sweet. I was talking to Jed today, and I was saying like we need to zoom some other fresh blood in once in a while into our meetings, just to
cool.
Just pop in for 10 minutes, say some stuff, just because we do have a screen at the main place we meet, and I just thought it'd be kind of cool. Like maybe you could come in sometime and just say what's up to our group and vice versa. Or
I built I'd be happy to. I'd love to.
Yeah,
I would love to. I'll talk about anything you want. But
sweet.
So Jules wanted me to present the debt spiral in like the way I just talked about it with you.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The actual like unavoidable math that's written down in a budget sheet. Like, this is the reality. This is what's happening, right? If anybody ever needs that as ammunition or like understanding in the back of their mind,
Right.
it's not like mathy, it's addition and subtraction, right?
Right.
And then I use that, like, we're a household that makes their $42,000 and we're going to spend 60. And we already have this much credit card debt.
Right.
That's what's going on, folks, right? There's no way out of that.
So you're going up to San Francisco and you're going to pitch it?
Peninsula.
Oh,
so
the Peninsula.
She came down to a South Bay one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Elizabeth was there from our group, I heard.
By the way, but when we hang up, I want to get her. Does she have a Twitter handle?
Yeah.
All right, because I need to get it because I forgot to get it from her. Anyway,
okay.
Elizabeth was there.
Yeah.
Jules came down, and I meant to follow up with Elizabeth, and that's why I'm asking for her handle. Anyway,
okay.
Jules wanted me to. She asked me a question, like kind of live over a beer, about the petrodollar. And I was like, okay, well, this is what that means. And I kind of walked through some of it. She knows most of it, but I was like giving my take on it.
Sure.
And that turned into debt spiral stuff. And she's like, whoa, can you come talk to our group about that? So anyway, I built 6 slides or so, like 10
nice
to do that for her.
Yeah.
So I'd be happy to do it for you too if you
want.
yeah,
that'd be great. I'll talk to Jed and Alan about it.
It's not like people there were like, I never knew this. It's more just like, here, just remember these numbers. Like, this is the reality of what anybody disagreeing with you, you just point them to the White House website.
Yeah.
This is what's on there. They're saying it out loud.
Yeah. Yeah, they're printing this data. We do have a mixed variety, so there actually is a possibility that some people aren't familiar in our group.
I
so
can't imagine everybody is, right? We've got people in our group that are like coders, Bitcoiners from 2014, 13.
Yeah.
All over the map, right? New, old, father, sons. Like, there's a pretty interesting.
Yeah, some of these meetings sound like they get pretty deep, especially if you go to like the bit devs and stuff, where it's just, you know,
a lot of. I'm useless with that stuff, by the way. Like,
yeah.
You want to know what my weakness is like on the tech side.
Yeah.
Even though I'm in tech,
right.
I can figure it out, but like, you don't want to rely on me for that.
Yeah.
Like zooming out and like, here's the big value picture of what's going on here. It's probably the only place I can provide value there, but
man,
like, I've been in sales, so I kind of know how to connect with someone's pain or interest.
Right.
You like get something over the line, right?
Yep. I feel that one. Well, I've definitely been super happy that we met, and I've appreciated our relationship and talking to you and getting to know you. And hopefully we can do a couple more of these, because I personally get a lot out of it. And I hope, even if a handful of other people, get as much as I do, I think it's definitely a net positive.
Yeah, really enjoyed talking to you. And,
awesome, man. Likewise.
Thanks again, like with all sincerity.
Yeah.
For welcoming me, a complete stranger, to you at Bitcoin, Pacific Bitcoin. It meant quite a bit. And you probably did that with like 30 people that day.
I did it with as many people as I possibly could, because I just felt like we were all family.
You to know, on a one-on-one N of one example, it actually is impactful. It means something. So,
man, I love it. I love you, buddy. Like, it's like you really feel like family. You feel like a brother or a cousin. So yeah, it's awesome, man.
Likewise.
Sure. I'm gonna stop the recording, and then